In 2001, when most Indians thought a cafe was either CCD or a five-star coffee shop, Riyaaz Amlani opened a place in Bombay called Mocha. He was 26. He'd just come back from UCLA, where he had studied entertainment management, the business side of bowling alleys, theme parks, places people went to do things. He came back to Bombay and decided what the city was missing was places to be. 25 years later, the company he started, Impresario Handmade Restaurants, runs 80 plus places across 20 cities. Social, Smokehouse Delhi, Antisocial, Bandra Bourn, Mocha. Over 8 million people visit these restaurants each year. This is the first part of my conversation with him. We cover how he got here, the MTV generation that grew up coveting all things Western, what he means when he says handmade, what it feels like after 25 years to lose a restaurant, and somewhere around the 45-minute mark, his first brush with entrepreneurship as a 6-year-old selling marbles. Part 2 lands next Monday. Until then, here's part 1. Yes, great to meet you. And I'm going to dive straight in. You launched Mocha in 2001,
Yes,
right?
2001 December.
Okay, great. 2001 is when I graduated with my master's. So I wish, I could go back in time somehow and it's like sometimes in the movies you have these things where with the benefit of hindsight, those threads cross, but I couldn't. What was a cafe? What made you start Mocha? What was Mocha back then in 2001? And what was the context that led you to Mocha? And why did you do it?
Wow. Okay. What was Mocha?
Yes.
What is Mocha? Mocha is still very much around.
No, what was it back
What
then and what is it
what was
today?
it in reference to? Its time and space, I suppose, is
Hmm.
what. Well, yeah, I think all restaurants and cafes are in many ways an expression of a city's cultural moment.
Mm-hmm.
In many ways, and as a city changes and evolves and grows and breeds and cities are, in my opinion, a living organism. It has its own pulse, it has its own pace, it has its own spread, it has its own personality. And I think in many ways restaurants often define the personality of a city, right? Um, at that point of time, Bombay, of course, is and was and always will be the city of dreams. Will always be the coolest city in India. Though people from Bangalore may have a different
I was just gonna say I'll
opinion,
let it slide.
and people from Delhi may have a different opinion, but you can't ignore the fact that Bombay was always the coolest cousin. You may argue that Bangalore has caught up and in some ways overtaken. Delhi, you may argue, had its moment and kind of crawled back into being Delhi. You could argue for any other city, but you can't take away from the fact that Bombay was the coolest cousin in the family. Um, at that point of time, yes, 2001, it was a very different kind of a landscape for restaurants and cafes and bars. You had the old legacy restaurants, which have been around for 50 years or so. Um, the scene was always in five stars at that point of time, and you had maybe one or two standalone restaurants and bars which had kind of become the fancy places for South Bombay's elite, because at that point of time South Bombay snobbery was a thing. Now, of course,
It's not now.
no, I think South Bombay has abdicated its snobbery to Bandra. And now Bandra is the new snob in Bombay. If you,
So this is cool kids within cool kids or
yeah,
cool
yeah,
cousins
yeah, yeah,
within
yeah,
cool.
yeah. First world problems, as you might call it. Yeah.
How old were you in 2001 when you started Mocha?
Oh my God, do I have to do this? Well, I think I was 27, 28,
Yeah.
maybe 26, in that range. Let's just put it that way. That's the difference between 50 and 49. So let's just put it there. Yeah, I was in that ballpark. I was in my 20s, late 20s. And I was transitioning from just having come out of college and being part of what was called the MTV generation, now called the Gen Xers. We
I'm
thought,
part of that very same generation.
no, you don't look worse for the wear. No, 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 no. You're surely a millennial.
You're 74 born, I'm 76 born.
Ah, okay, wow. Damn it, you make it look good, buddy.
Thank you. And so
Yes.
we have a lot of shared experiences around that time, and I know exactly what you mean by the MTV generation.
Yes, we were the MTV generation. We were a generation that was starved for things Western. We grew up coveting all things Western, right? I'm talking about this because it's a very important distinction as generations grow up and they change, and therefore the landscape around it changes. We grew up, you know, watching Top of the Pops on video cassettes. We grew up on borrowing and learning about Western culture from pirated cassettes of American sitcoms. Also, our exposure to what was happening in culture was not coming in through any other media source. We had Doordarshan, maybe one channel, two channels, black and white television. Um, so for us, we grew up coveting this intensely because it was not available to us. I think 1990 is when we first decided to open ourselves up to the world. But till then, maybe Coca-Cola came in, and that was the biggest thing that have happened to India. It was so exciting to get a foreign brand in this country. And with that mindset, and foreign education being such a rare thing, you had this very West facing or West aspirational culture. And if you went out then to a restaurant, it had to be Western. If you were cool, your guilty pleasure was always Indian. And when you went out, it was always to eat cuisine from far away lands. So
And you studied abroad as well. You went to
yes,
UCLA.
I did. And yeah, I actually went there to study entertainment management, which was the business side of the entertainment business. So sports, musicals, amusement centers, any places that people used for the entertainment economy, the business side of that. That's what I'd actually got for. In many ways, for me, at that point of time, I did think that while Bombay was such a cool place to be in, it did not have the attributes that most leading cities in the world had. It didn't have a thriving cafe culture. It didn't have a thriving bar culture. And more importantly, it did not have places where you could go and do things. Right? And that kind of Bombay was walking up and down Marine Drive, or if you're feeling adventurous, Bandra Promenade. But besides the sea, we really did not have places where we could congregate as a city. It was either your schools or colleges or your offices, or the gymkhanas and the clubs, which are again a colonial hangover that we had. But we really did not have places you could commune with the city, and I felt that scarcity very acutely. And maybe it was some degree of civic pride, which said that I want to have cool things in my city, because
That
when
is that is typically how many founders start businesses. They're scratching some itch that they themselves have. So you seem to be saying the same thing, that you wanted a cafe sort of, or a place where you could feel proud of and hang out. Is that how Mocha came
I did
about?
not want a place that I could feel proud of. I wanted a place that we could feel proud of as a city. When we wanted to have something to do in Bombay which could give it its soul, right? Uh, you went to LA, there were bowling alleys you could go to, there were bars you could go to, there were nightclubs you could go to, there were coffee shops you could lounge around in all day. There were museums that you could go and spend days and days on. I used to work in a museum part time, and I used to see how people were coming to consume culture, and while they were consuming it, they just didn't want to see it. They wanted to live it. They wanted to breathe in it. They wanted to soak it up, right? Um, and I found that very missing in Bombay. So I always wanted to do things in Bombay that Bombay could call it, be proud of as a city. So
So,
I
I,
studied for to bring those things
yeah.
in. I went to LA. It was very formative. I saw so many ideas that were missing in in India, for that matter.
Hmm.
And I
And
knew that
that's how
as
Mocha
somebody
came
who's
about.
just come out, from um, a college and just started up my man. I was still in my socializing years, so to speak, right in the 20s. We desperately needed spaces where you could socialize. So I started off with wanting to create amusement centers, and I got lucky. There were certain developers. Mr. Hiranandani was building this amazing complex far
Right.
north. Yeah.
I'll get into that later, because otherwise the risk is that this question will
Ah, yes.
kind of
I
expand to
am
fill
regressing.
the entire
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
conversation,
Okay,
right?
okay.
So I'll come back to that. I
Yeah,
definitely do want to come back
sure.
to that. Um, your company is called Impresario Handmade Restaurants, right? What does handmade mean in a country where most restaurant chains have essentially standardized over time? And if you look at restaurants as a business, and it is a business, standardization is an imperative. What does handmade mean, and why does it exist in Impresario's name?
Well, handmade means something that you've built or crafted with your hands. So, in a sense that you take a lot more responsibility about or for it. Uh, Handmade represents some degree of craft and love and attention, and a slowness in its making, and attention to detail. uh, in my head was handmade. And of course, when I was starting off, handmade seemed to have soul. And now that we have scaled up a little bit, handmade does seem a little bit like a folly, but or a vanity. But I think this is something that we will hold on to for the rest of our lives, uh, at least for as long as Impresario continues to run, and that's our philosophy. I think guests can see things that are factory manufactured, whether it's food or whether it's the restaurant or the ambience or the vibe. Guests can see it, right? And no two mochas were ever the same. That was something that we were very, very clear. Every mocha had its very distinct identity and sensibility. And I think that's something that stayed with me because I learned very early that people enjoyed that about our restaurants, that the fact that they were not same, that they were completely unexpected. And that became a little bit of a philosophy for all our restaurants, and we still follow it. All our restaurants have their own unique flavor. Social has its own. Every social has a completely different vibe, and we explore a different facet of what a social space can be. So it's always been part of our DNA
Got
and
it.
something that's going to stick around.
And what about the other word, impresario?
Ah, impresario. Yes, again coming back to a Western facing impresario is an Italian word which literally means a businessman, but more particularly a businessman engaged in the business of public entertainment. And but like I said, that was the genesis of our journey. It was all about uh, creating a business out of entertaining people. So I thought impresario was a fitting word. Yeah.
All right. Now, this business that you've built, which you started, got the ball rolling in 2001, and here we are in 2026. How large is it today in terms of either the number of restaurants or the revenue or the people that you employ?
Okay, so we are at about 80 restaurants, give or take a couple. We are a 900 crore company in terms of top line, and we employ over, or we work with 5,500 people,
Okay.
20 cities.
20 cities, 80 restaurants, roughly 80 restaurants, 900 crores.
80 plus restaurants, yeah.
That must be what? About a 10x growth over the last 10 years? Because you were roughly, what, 90 crores around 10 years ago per my research. So, I mean, I'm sure it could be maybe a year here or there. But approximately my research said, what was that? In decade ago, it said 62 crore. Right? So,
Wow. No.
but that's more than that, right? 900 crores. That's, again, like the reason I bring that up is that this is a sector. I mean, most people don't realize it. We talk about venture capital and, high failure rates, etc., and stuff like that. But the sector with the highest mortality and failure rate is restaurants. It is incredibly notorious, right? Just people don't understand how hard it is. What have you done that others didn't do? Or what have you not done that others did? What is the difference? Is the delta that I'm trying to understand?
Well, I'm not really going to kind of do this in comparison to others.
No,
Yeah. If it wasn't for others, I would have not learned from their mistakes. I would have not learned from their successes. So it would be a fallacy to say that, or a misnomer to say that I have all the answers and I have it all figured out, and the others didn't do so well. We've all pushed each other. We've learned from each other. We as a restauranting community are a very tight bunch. We hang out a lot together. We are some of our best friends are restaurateurs, and in a sense, we commiserate with each other a lot because only we really understand what we go through on a daily basis. So we're a tight community, and we're very open to sharing our learnings and with each other. Look, it could be that I was just lucky sometimes. Maybe some of our philosophy worked. I look around some great restaurants that we were, or restaurateurs who were really ahead of the curve when I was starting off and I aspired to be them, were hard done by just sheer dumb luck. Sometimes you invest a lot in property and it turns out that it was illegal, or some black swan event that happens with
Or the city
licensing
decides
or
to
policy
make
change.
a road in front of it and
Yeah,
digs it
and
up or
everything
something.
changes, right? You're so subject to environmental conditions. You're very exposed to environmental conditions. It's not, building could go into redevelopment. Somebody could come in and, cut your electricity wire for days. Everything that can go wrong has gone wrong in our business. I guess I really believe that the philosophy of being handmade and caring about each restaurant deeply was is something that's helped us. I had been dismissive of systems and having a tight system that works and processes and not being people dependent. And I strongly believe that we are all about people. That systems can only get you that far. And it's a QSR concept for scale, a hyperscale, again, a Western precept. But at the end of the day, we are in the hospitality business. And if we are not hospitable towards our guests, nobody's going to come back. And that cannot be done in process, and that cannot be done in systems. And I have oscillated through people versus processes a few times in my life, but I keep coming back to people with process. It is the people that do make a difference. It is, you can't do it without them, because the magic comes from how genuine that smile is on the door and throughout the space. I always believe, and I tell my people, that the first time people come to the restaurant is because of the hype. The second time they come because they enjoyed the experience. And the third time they come is because they want to see your face, because you made them feel really special. You made them feel comfortable. You made them feel welcome. You made them feel like you belong here. And that is the difference, I feel. And I think restaurants also have to keep evolving.
Why don't you answer that question in the context of social? You started social in what, 2014?
2014.
Social is absolutely your most popular format?
It's our most scaled up format. Yes.
All right. What's the difference between the popular and the scaled up for you?
Well, popular would be for the kind of repeat behavior that we see, uh, the amount of traction, how many people come in. Scaled up, of course, would be how many spaces, what is the store count. I guess that's what
Got it. Got
the
it.
difference would
How
be.
would you describe social today? What is social?
We when in the starting of a conversation, we were discussing the need to have spaces.
Yes. When we were discussing
Yes.
Mocha.
And Mocha was a third space. It's just a space that allowed you to lounge around, right? It was previous to that, it was just restaurants. And we have to understand a very crucial difference between restaurants and cafes, okay, or spaces that operate in the third space format. Restaurants, you go for lunch, you go for dinner, you go for a structured kind of experience. You're going to have a full meal with friends, your celebration, dinner, hanging out, whatever. The cafes, you go for absolutely no reason. Cafes is a place where you don't go to buy coffee. You go to buy time with your friends. You go to relax. You go to chill out. You go to center yourself. You go to feel less lonely. You go to feel alive. You go to commune with your people. So third spaces are very, very different. Mocha was a third space for Gen Xers, uh, and social was a third space for the millennials in many ways. And yes, I think social was built on top of Mocha, but it was still a third space. Right? Mocha went through its ups and downs. We became very closely associated with shisha, which was actually just a sidelight, but it became the hero product. Maybe because people enjoyed the shisha at that point of time, but we had become
It was a phase.
so closely associated. Even though even then we had more coffees, we had 18 different varietals of coffee, which no one even today has, right? But we were very, very special. We were specialty coffee before third wave became a thing, but it did not matter because people had not. Sometimes the idea comes before the audience, right? And getting the idea to arrive at the same time that the audience arrives is actually the biggest skill set. There's no glory in being ahead of your time. But yes, in Mocha, the offering of the coffees was way ahead of his time. Shisha was a sidelight because we had built ourselves not after an Italian inspired American coffee shop. We had built ourselves after kawa khanas, which are the coffee shops of Morocco and Turkey, which I felt had a lot more soul, especially in the third space. Mocha was for a third space for the Gen Xers. Social was a third space for millennials. The generation had changed. What we aspired to do had changed. Our heroes had changed. Our ambitions had changed. So social was actually taking the learnings from Mocha and then taking it forward in many ways. So it was a rebrand for Mocha in many ways because we had to shake off the shisha hangover. And when the shisha got banned in 2008, it almost killed us because nobody really came back for the coffee.
Because
Everybody
it was
wanted the
such a
shisha.
strong brand association.
Yeah, I think, but our coffees were amazing. We were serving Jamaican Blue Mountain, we had Hawaiian Kona, we had Kenya Double A. We have fantastic coffees, which even till date you will struggle to find in India. We were serving it in filter in French presses, not in espressos. We wanted you to taste. Now the world is coming around to pour overs and 360, but we were doing that a long time ago. So, but anyway, we needed to get away from the
Got
shisha
it.
thing. So we came up with social. We figured out, look, people really don't care so much about things that you care about. You need to care about what they care about and not the other way around. You don't want them to care about what you want to
What
care
was that
about.
for millennials?
For millennials, well, I think when the Gen Xers were growing up, our heroes were different, weren't they? We were all about the rock and roll and rebelling and, ripped jeans and motorcycles. The millennials grew up looking at Mark Zuckerberg. They grew up looking at Elon Musk. They didn't want to wear toned jeans they wanted to fit in and they wanted to change the world with an app. They wanted to build something. There was a very strong cultural movement where tech was exploding.
Right.
We started,
The hustle culture, builder culture.
yes, we were no longer Western uh, infatuated. We had time to consume everything the West threw at us, And we then decided that yes, while these few things are good in the West, some things about India are cool too, right? So it was before that going out was all about the Western products. Social for the first time came in with a Hindi script, came in being bilingual, came in saying that look, it's okay if you want a beer and a burger, it's okay if you want a chai and a khari, it's okay if you want a coffee and a biscotti. That's fine, it's up to you. Your third space should not be defined by product. So we kind of built a third space which was relevant to the millennials of India. Because Indians are, a very different breed. We constantly take Western precepts and concepts and we try and force it down our guests, but we seldom look inward. So I think social was that exercise where we were looking at who we are as Indians and that time and space, and what did that place
Got it.
space
What's the
want.
equivalent for Gen Z?
Uh, I'm still trying to figure that out. But yeah, I'm actually working really hard to figure that out. What do Gen Zs want? Um, Gen Zs is also very different in terms of personality, and we will have to to kind of evolve. If we don't do that, we will just fall by the wayside because we are no longer relevant to the audience with the most amount of disposable time.
Got it. This evolution, I'm assuming, is this constant process that happens in your business, in the restaurant's business. You had a restaurant called Saltwater
Saltwater Grill.
Cafe.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's Saltwater Grill before that.
yeah,
That became Saltwater Cafe.
cafe, and then it finally became Bandra Bourn.
That became Bandra Bourn.
So help me understand what is actually the process that leads to these changes. What are the triggers? What do you look at and say, this needs to change, the name needs to change, the decor needs to change, the place needs to change? What signals are you looking at that lead you to these?
We wet our fingers with our lips and we just put. No, you have to be aware because the market changes, right? What was novel today, what was exciting today.
How do you do that? Because that
Y-
sounds very easy to a casual listener,
It's
but it
not.
can't.
It's actually quite easy to see. When we started off Saltwater Cafe in Bandra, there were no all-day cafes in Bandra. Right? There was Andora's where you could go. Where there was Hirsch Bakery and A1 Bakery, but there were coffee shops, but there were no all-day cafes. At that point of time, good food was only available in a few restaurants. Indigo, Olive, Saltwater Grill was doing these steaks and salmon and sea bass and pastas. These were new things in back then in 2005, 2000. They were not freely available. A good quality pasta was not available anywhere. Now you take it as commonplace. Uh, Similarly, when you started Mocha, you were not getting a good cappuccino anywhere. But now you get it in every restaurant. You'll get it perfectly done. You'll get the perfect froth. But that point of time, it was something that was not freely available. So it all depends on how much of the market is there. When we started, there was no all-day cafes. Now, in Bandra, you can't throw a stone without it falling in somebody's matcha latte, right? And I felt the last thing Bandra needed was another cafe because there were so many cafes. While there's a lot of love for Saltwater Cafe. We had also become a kind of a caricature of what we started off in 2000 because what the guests want there, they grow with you, they love the brand, they keep coming back. Your loyalists will keep coming back for more. But the new generation does not care about that, right? They does not care about my father's brand anymore. So you have to keep evolving. Now you could either do that evolutionarily or you do that revolutionarily. If you can evolve, it's a skill set because then your older audience, your loyal audience, your short tail does not like the change. But the long tail or the new audience is just not walking in because it doesn't feel as relevant. That calls for revolution. That calls for a completely different brand.
Hmm.
That calls for a completely different idea. Evolution is when you can change the menu, change the decor slowly, slowly, and then kind of transition into another generation. So I think at that point in time, because there were so many cafes in Bandra, I felt Bandra didn't have really nice bars and interesting places to go and eat. And Gresham, who was my partner in Bandra Bourn, and he's he's the soul behind Saltwater Cafe and Saltwater Grill, had a lot more to say. I keep making a joke that I was getting a rocket scientist to play with matches in a cafe, right? So um, he had
Got it.
something to express, and we had something to
Hmm.
say. We had the real estate, because at the end of the day, the game, honestly, in this business is about real estate, is about properties. Um,
How so?
India has a lot of width, but it doesn't have depth. Right? The well-heeled audience, the audience that will consume a certain type of product or would appreciate a certain type of product, I would say there are still 80 pockets in India where this can happen. Right? In Bangalore, okay, you have CBD, Lavelle Road, Indira Nagar, Koramangalam. What else?
Right.
Whitefield, Belandur, Hebar. Right? You're struggling now with me, right? After 4, 5 locations, right? And that's Bangalore, like the biggest, like one of the biggest metropolitan cities we have in the country. In
So that's why
Bombay,
they say location, location, location when it comes to
location
restaurants.
helps, but localities help more, right? You could location is about, is it a corner property? Is it on a high street? Does it have footfall? But locality is about where is the biggest spending power? Where do people have the most amount of disposable? Where is the culture of going out very pervasive? Right? Bandra has the most pervasive going out culture in Bombay. You don't have that culture even in South Bombay. Maybe it'll be topped by maybe Warsaw, but again, the wallet sizes change. So in Bombay, maybe there's South Bombay, there's Worli, there's Bandra, there's Juhu, Warsaw, Goregaon. After that, again, you're left with slim picking. Same in Delhi. So if you do the math, there are really 80 locations where great ideas, great concepts in India could work. After that is still India. It's still
Hmm.
very different. So that's what I mean. That the kind of people that we are chasing, maybe the first 10 and the next 10 mil, right?
Got it.
And they are spread in 20 cities.
All right. Let me shift to a slightly more businessy question, which is what's a better business or a metric for a restaurant group other than top line revenue? What is it that you actually prefer to observe and orient yourself around at Impresario?
Frequency uh, is very important metric. How often can we get our guests to come back, and what percentage of our guests are coming back more than once a month, more than once at least 3 months, and who's coming after 6 months. I think frequency becomes very, very important for us. Um, the whole game of the restaurant business is basically average order value into how many covers you have, into how many times you can rotate those covers. It's simply that, right? Your capacity. So you could, let's say, you have Rameshwaram, which has a ridiculously high table turnaround, but a very, very low average order value. Right? And then you contrast that with a five-star restaurant that has a maybe the exact opposite issue. You have very high AOVs, average order values, but you are not able to turn your table around more than 1.5 times. And you're not fully expanding your capacity. So in India, it's a simple equalization effect. The lower your AOV, the higher your capability of turning around tables. The higher your AOV, the lower your capability of turning around tables. So the holy grail is which is the maximum, where you can get the maximum AOV and the maximum table turnarounds. And that is the simple mathematic of this business. How can I maximize my average order value, and how many times can I get the table turnaround? And that balance, where you get
Is
the
there
maximum
a
result.
ratio or a metric that describes it? That
Well, we find that in sub 1,000 rupees per person AOV, you are likely to get table turnaround multiple of at least 4. Uh, Above that, if you're doing 4 timetable around, you're very, very good. Like if you're let's say your AOV is 2,000, and if you're able to turn around your table uh, twice or 4 times, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. So let's say if you're a 40 cover restaurant and you are able to do 160 covers, if your AOV is above 1,500, I want to write you a check, right? But at the same time, it's about that. So that is the metric really, and you want to see whether you're at the end of the day you want to be taking home at least 20% in terms of bottom line from every restaurant.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, um, COVID was obviously one of the largest shocks for all sorts of businesses, but especially the restaurant business, right? Like, and it was very hard. But I think by and large, if I'm not, I mean, the research points out to roughly 24 lakh jobs were lost during this period. And I'm sure some of them came back, but not all.
We lost
But
35% of our restaurants. That's very scary.
you lost 35%.
No,
And,
th-
during
the
that period, or
the
where
the
are you?
restaurant industry lost 35% of
Got
the
it.
restaurants during COVID.
My point was about Impresario. By and large, did you guys get through all right? Like, I mean, I'm sure you suffered quite a bit, but
It was
you,
not fatal.
hmm,
Thankfully, in the restaurant business, like I was saying, we deal. We had a lot of net practice with crises before. We've seen maybe 3 or 4 possible mass extinction events for our group ourselves.
what
So,
are those?
well, for the first time, maybe you look at when the hookah ban came. I had
Right.
26, 27 Mocha outlets, and I was thriving. And the shisha ban came about, and I lost 80% of my business overnight. Right? And people just didn't come anymore. And there was this kind of, okay, we're not going to go to this place because we used to go to this place because of this product. Now the hero product is not there. I'm not going to go back. That was there. We had another extinction event where we were promised. We raised some private equity money from a strategic source. Uh, there were certain growth conditions attached. We were going to take money in tranches. Uh, we went out and got all the stores, and then the money did not come. And we were paying rents. We had project costs to deal with. We had people, and we had no we had run out of money, where there were 15 restaurants in various stages of development, and I had no more money left because the money that was promised never came, because of personal whatever the reasons were. So that was because that was one of our fastest paces of growth that we had undertaken, and just as we were learning how to run, we ran out of fuel. That was crazy. And then of course COVID came around. So what the point and we've had the highway liquor ban, we've had GST input challenges. So we've seen some many crazy times. So crisis was not new for us during COVID. Um, I think what really worked for us is our people carried us. I wouldn't say that it was my leadership that saw us through. Our people, when this happened, we had no idea how long it was going to last. But in the second month of COVID, it had become clear that this is going to go up and it's not coming down at any point of time. Earlier, we were still in denial. Okay, 15 days will be over. Just another 10 days, everything will be back to normal. And I think the second month, hard reality set that it's not going to be. And again, we are a cash flow business, right? We are a working capital negative business. So uh, we get on credit, but we sell on cash. Uh, we ran out of money in 15 days. We had rents to pay. We had salaries to pay. We had goods to buy. We had no money. Um, I didn't have any answers. I called for a town hall, online. There were, I think, 3,000 people at that point of time that we had on our books. And I said, look, we have no money. I can't pay you now. Okay. There's no chance I can pay you now. I can either fire half of you, or I can keep all of you and pay you all 40% salaries. What would you guys prefer? And everybody unanimously said, okay, you know what? It's okay. Don't pay us this month. Give us a place to stay. Uh, Pay us 40%. Don't fire anybody. And these guys organized themselves, staying in restaurants. Deliveries have started. We Half the team was cooking, half the team, the same people which are bringing food from the table, from the kitchen to your table, now bringing it from the kitchen to your home. Hustled. And some landlords gave us reprieve. Some landlords said, okay, we'll charge you half. Some landlords said, okay, we'll structure the thing for you. um, there were maybe two or three landlords that said, hey, you know what, we want our rental, we're not going to make any changes, get out. And we lost three restaurants during the COVID time, which at that point of time was not insignificant, but it was we scraped through, and we became much tighter as a company. Yeah.
So can I ask a follow-up question there?
Yeah.
What does losing a restaurant mean to you? What does
Nothing.
it feel like?
Nothing. It had to be said. It was said. Is utility is over now. Let's move on. Right. It's the itch once is scratched. It's scratched. It only then has financial implications, but not emotional reasons. And I think a lot of times we would let go of property. We would only if the property, we don't see potential in the property, or if the rents have exceeded its logical amount. We always hold on to a property as far as possible. We are willing to change the concept to become more relevant. We are willing to renovate. We are willing to reinvest in it. We are a location based business, like I said earlier. So we like to hang on to a property. We don't like to lose it. We enjoy a good relationship with our landlords. We pay, landlords trust us because we don't give them problems. So they're happy to let us continue as long as we can in that property. So,
Got it.
but if we have to walk out of a property, then you have to have the discipline to say, hey, we don't see potential here. No matter what we do, it's not going to work. We don't have a brand in our armory that will thrive over here. We made a mistake. Let's count our losses and quit. Because if you're egotistical about it, you'll keep throwing good money behind bad money, right? And sometimes when a restaurant is dipping, you got to double down and reinvest in that property. But you got to also know that, is that reinvestment going to yield something, or am I throwing more money down the tube? And it's not an easy decision, but once it's made, there's no emotional damage.
Right. I'm seeing a lot of threads around some of the things that you said earlier. You said, look, we're a very tight knit industry. You almost seem to kind of hint at it's sort of like the shared daily trauma of, like, all the things that can go wrong,
Shared
that
generational trauma, yes. Yeah.
that sort of bring restaurateurs together. You talked about when COVID hit you and all your employees came together and said, we're in this together. You talked about all these near-death experiences, so, which are probably called macro near-death experiences, which is excluding the micro near-death, which is because the running of a restaurant means
Yeah.
a chef doesn't come on a particular day, supplies don't come on a particular day, the electricity gets cut.
Your neighbor does pest control.
That's right, like,
Yeah.
so there are so many things. So I'm trying to understand, what is your mental model of a restaurant? Because, you started your first Mocha in 2001. Yeah, it's 25 years ago. So it's sort of like you're looking at this thing that has to keep on going, and the world is going to kind of throw everything at it, but this thing has to keep on evolving and shape shifting, and sometimes shutting down, sometimes expanding, sometimes contracting. So what is your mental model of what sort of a business model survives this? What makes a great restaurant brand, not just a single restaurant, or like what makes a restaurant group resilient enough to get through this over decades? What does it need to be?
The hospitality business, the restaurant business, has several manifestations. Cafes being one, fine dining, premium dining, casual dining, ghost kitchens, delivery kitchens, fast casual, casual. low AOV, high AOV kind of businesses. I think because we don't have that much depth, like I said, we in India is a 80 to 100 location game where you can make serious money. After that, the economics don't stack up for the businesses that we are. So for those first 10 million and 20 million, I still think that if somebody comes up with a scalable answer for the first 100 million, kudos, they're going to do really well, and there are people doing that. There are lots of South Indian chains which are doing that. Lots of legacy businesses doing that. Haldiram's for one is a great example of that. But the rest of the people who are going after the 20 million like us, you need to have a diversified business, right? Because there's going to be recession is going to be fortunate for a particular type of restaurant. Prosperity is going to be a good time for a particular type of restaurant. And over a span of 20 years, 30 years, you're going to see a few cycles for sure. So at that point in time, if you have, what to expand and what to contract, we keep going. So we've shape-shifted through brands. We've shape-shifted through concepts, ideas, types of businesses, from being very high-end resto bars to being only about cafes to be bar business, to be nightclub business. We've gone through it all, right? I think that what has happened is we've known what to press the accelerator on at what cycle of the economy, and to be able to have those options, you need to have these 4 or 5 different types of engines available for you to keep growing. If you paint yourself too much into a corner, you're too susceptible to micro changes or even macro economic changes. Yeah.
All right. Let me shift slightly to you. Is it true that you were expelled?
Okay, I'm leaving now.
Is it true that you were expelled from school at 16 for selling marbles?
No.
No?
No. I think we've got our stories jumbled up. I was never really expelled from school. And this whole marble thing was maybe when I was 6 years old or 7 years old, not 16. So, yeah. I was never expelled.
But what was the marbles incident?
I was caught. I was suspended once because I was caught talking in during an examination with a student ahead of me, and that
So there were no marbles.
there were marbles. There was a business idea around marbles, but I was not expelled because of that. There was a complaint that was made.
What was
to
it?
my
What
mother.
was the business idea around marbles?
And
Just to be clear, these are the play marbles, or is it like the marble that goes into homes? It's playing marbles.
those glass marbles, gotiyan,
That's right.
kanche.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. So what was the business
The
idea?
business model was, look, for some reason, marbles was very popular when we were growing up because, that was the sport that kids could gather around and play marbles. And I was really shit at it. I was really rubbish at it.
Man, I was about to say that, should I admit that I was shit at it? Because I could never figure out how to hit. Exactly, right?
And
go all over the
again,
place.
it's something that's completely died out, right? As a sport, as a activity for things to do. But for me, at that point in time, there was this marble which people you were very fond of, and there was this people coveting a certain type of a green marble,
That's right.
and then
the dark onyx marbles, the green marbles,
and
all
then
of that.
then there was this thing which was called the Chinese marble, which was all white but had a beautiful one little speckle.
twirl,
on it was the Chinese marble. I had discovered this marker pen, which kind of could take a 20 paisa marble and convert it into a 2 rupee Chinese thing. So
How old were you?
I was 6 or 7. So while kids were playing marbles, I was sitting and, taking ordinary marbles and converting them into cheaper Chinese models and selling them for 1/3 the price of a
How
Chinese
long would
marble.
the markup
That
last?
scheme lasted until somebody decided to wash their marbles. And
All right.
yeah, the mother got upset that I was selling them fake Chinese marbles. So yeah,
Got
that
it.
was it.
You did spend some time, I think, in the entertainment sector. Was this before UCLA or after?
After.
So what all did you do before you ended up in 2001 starting Mocha?
A lot, a lot. I was serially entrepreneurial. I was trying to hustle since I was 12 years old, full time. Uh, did a little bit
Do
of
you ever,
that. Then.
why? I mean, it sounds like a very dumb question, but why? Why? I mean, I'm sure you've got by now, you've reflected and you have a sense of why were you serially entrepreneur at age 12? Because almost no kids are. Why were you?
I didn't have a choice. I had to be entrepreneurial. Um, I think that once the need started off as I had to be entrepreneurial, but uh, once I became entrepreneurial, I really enjoyed being entrepreneurial. So it started off with a necessity, but then it became a need. Does that make sense? Started a necessity and then became a need. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
So,
Maybe some greed. Look, I've come from a fairly middle class background. One bedroom apartment in Baikala, small, not very great, but when you start earning money and it's and the kind of things you can do with it, it's a lifestyle that you had that you could then blend in, right? You could do that. So I enjoyed being making money. I did. Yeah.
you worked in a bowling alley, entertainment, yeah?
I helped set up bowling alleys for people. So I was not working for bowling alleys. I kind of, while this degree I studied this entertainment amusement center business quite a
Right,
lot.
right.
And we had absolutely no amusement center. I think in 97, 98, the pool
There
parlors were
used to be
becoming
the,
a
yeah.
thing and the
I think I
bowling
remember
alleys were
Amoeba in the
in,
earliest,
yeah,
yeah, in
in
Bangalore
on
in the
Church Street.
2000,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it had become a thing. And and I had built enough contacts. I'd gone to a few exhibitions, taken a few contacts, and I had, so if somebody wanted to build up a center, I would have the import people that I could import because relations with them. I could segregate the amount of activities based on the space available and then set up systems for people to roll them. So I became a consultant
Hmm.
for developers because I couldn't afford those real estate. I couldn't afford the capital equipment. But there were a lot of people who wanted to build self-paying attractions in their developments, right?
Hmm.
Hiranandani was one of the first. Then there was bowling company at Phoenix Mills because that was the first thing that put Phoenix Mills on the map, and now it's the most sought after retail destination. But that bowling company alone, which had 20 bowling alleys and a beer bar and arcade games and things to do, brought in a lot of people. And one of the things I saw was people were really not looking for bowling; they were looking for spending time together, for permission to spend time together. They were buying time together. So whether it was a bowling session or whether it's a cup of coffee with your mate, all you are really doing is finding a need to hang out with each other. So I realized very quickly that people want spaces where they can commune with each other. And that's what really started off my journey. And I said that while bowling alleys are very expensive, you just put a table and a chair and a coffee machine. It's much cheaper and way more efficient.
Hmm.
And way more efficient in terms of square footage. So kind of flip from that to
Okay,
that story.
this next question is a little bit of like, different from everything that I asked you till now. On a scale of 1 to 10, how do you rate yourself as a CEO and as a parent? You have two children, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I have two
How
boys.
old are they?
Uh, 8 and 11.
All right,
Yeah,
great.
two boys.
Question. All right. Scale of 1 to 10, self rating as a CEO and self rating as a parent.
Maybe as a parent, I give myself 7.5. Um, I'm a good father. I like to believe. Me and my kids share a great bond. My wife is amazing, but they
Your wife's
because
name is Kiran.
Kiran, yes. She's the primary caregiver. The only reason because I'm working, so I I spend about 20 days away from them, traveling, and I'm only with them 10 days a month. But when I'm there for those 10 days, I try and make myself as available as possible. Um, as a CEO, hmm, I would probably give myself a 5. Yeah,
Whoa, that's very harsh.
No, it's not.
It's not?
I'm I'm not. Again,
That's like a coin toss.
okay.
Surely you've done better than a coin
There are.
toss. You run a 900 crore business which has survived over 25 years. By the way, survival itself is like a huge thing in your industry, and you've grown it to what, 80 restaurants and 100 crores. Why do you think it's a coin toss?
It's okay. Building a restaurant is a very different skill from building an organization. And I think maybe that's one of the reasons why so many restaurants fail, or groups fail. Um, and I'm beginning to realize the hard way that running an organization.
What's the difference? Like for someone from the outside, when they look at Impresario, they see all your restaurants, right? But you're saying there's also something else which you're not seeing, which is the organization. What is that organization, and how is building it and running it very different?
So building a company, it requires a certain type of a skill set. It requires a certain degree of processes, certain degree of systems, certain more formalized approach to business, especially when you have so many people in the system, right? Um, right now we are going through one of the largest HR crises that we've ever seen in our business. It's just
Is this because of the fuel crisis?
no, it's got nothing to do
no.
with that. It's just the fact that uh, we are running out of people in the restaurant business. There's severe attrition.
How can that be? Where are they going?
They are going to Dubai, they're going to Muscat, they're going to Canada, they're going to New Zealand, they're going look, 1 out of 4 people in the employable age in the world is Indian. It necessitates that 1 of 4 jobs in with the world will be done by an Indian. First of all, they're going abroad for better service, carnival, cruises, ships, a lot of that. A lot of businesses have realized that customer experience is becoming very, very important. So the first place they decide to go and poach from is hospitality. So any
Because
business
they've been trained to.
because they've been trained. Yes, whether you're selling insurance or you're selling a car or you're in the airline business, hospitality never hurts, right? And I think a lot of people are understanding that. So and it's also a tough business, right? It's a hard business. There are easier opportunities available sitting on the desk, and I think it does take a toll standing on your feet. Uh, 6 days a week for 9 hours every day, clocking at least 25,000 steps, or standing in the kitchen in a 50-degree environment in a very high stress, high demanding environment. It's not easy. It does start taking a toll. So yeah. So the challenges which I face running as a CEO is very different from the challenges I face while making a restaurant. Because when you're making a restaurant, it's more shoulder to shoulder. Communications are easier. You get everybody's in the same room. You're with everybody. You get to see what's going on. It's hospitality. They will forgive you gaps in processes if you make a mistake. It's easier to solve because you're right there. When you're running an organization, it's about imprinting your philosophy. It's about letting go. It's about having trust. It's about setting goals, targets, doing follow-up meetings, being productive in your meetings, talking to bankers, talking to funds. It's a different skill set.
Okay, that leads up to my next question, which is, in a roughly 80 restaurant group, what's the one thing you've never been able to delegate away from yourself? You want to, but you haven't been able to delegate it yet.
I think layouting and final property selection is something I'm not been able to fully delegate. Creating a layout of a space is very, very crucial, because that is, for me, is make or break. So I'm very, very clear about focusing on the layouts myself or making tweaks, and I'm quite fanatical about it until I don't get every placement of every chair, every table, every service station, every bar counter absolutely right. I keep pushing back. So it takes me about six weeks sometimes to come up with the perfect layout, which is also space efficient, which makes people enjoy the space, where the flow of the crowd is organic and everything just feels intuitive. Um, that to me, and again, the space itself, like what is the direction that space is going to pursue. So the creative aspects of that is something I still very strongly involved in. Although I'm getting better at letting go on that as well. Yeah.
Because that would, in some senses, tie to that earlier point that you made about the organization, right? Surely you can't do
It
everything by
is, yeah,
yourself.
it is. It has been a very tragic handing over of everything that I love to other people when I'm running a business. Everything that I loved about the business, I find myself now twice removed from. But I guess it's a part of growing up as a restaurateur. Yeah.
But it is the thing that most founders also struggle with, right? Because you set up, you start doing something because you enjoy it, and then you build it like, with
Yeah.
your hands, and then,
Then you let it
you
go.
can't let it. Yeah, exactly. But you must let it go
Yeah.
because that's the only way things scale.
Yeah. I am transitioning much against my will, kicking and screaming. I am trying to grow up. I'm trying to become an adult. I'm trying to become that boardroom warrior and not a frontline warrior. Um, and it's an interesting journey. It's a different trip. Building restaurants and building an organization is two different skill sets.
What's that difference? Let's say, what's the difference that a boardroom warrior, what does a boardroom warrior do? Till now we've talked largely about the other side, but what does a successful, great boardroom warrior restaurant group CEO do?
I guess it's a difference between an economist and an entrepreneur. I think in a boardroom, you are taking more macroeconomic decisions. You're trusting, things, take decisions which is more strategic as opposed to more tactical.
Like with the HR example, what are you folks? I mean, how do you? I'm sure it's not a problem that only concerns you. It must be a wider problem. How
It is
how
a
you
wider
dealing?
problem. Yes, it is a wider problem.
How do you deal with it?
But we have to find out what the reasons for those attritions are, right? We kind of we realized that we lost about half our staff last year, and we replaced half our staff. So if you imagine, out of 5,500 people, 2,800 we went through, and this was unprecedented for us. We've never had this problem, right? And then, for example, you kind of then think about, okay, how many people are leaving in the first 3 months? How many people are leaving in the first 6 months? How many lifers are leaving, and how many people are leaving in 2 years, right? And those issues are different, and you try and figure out what is happening, right? The guys who leave to you in 3 months or less than 3 months is definitely a cultural problem. People who are leaving you in the first year is a management problem, and people who are leaving you after 5 years is a bigger problem. So we approach it differently, different views, different solutions. So,
Got it.
but if I was running a restaurant,
Yeah.
I would be able to deal with it on a more human level. Yeah, रुक जा, क्या चाहिए तुझे? Don't worry, मैं करके देता हूँ. But if I'm doing this in a boardroom, I have to do it more in a policy scenario. More
Got
on a. That's the difference.
If you've been a long-time listener to this podcast and are glad we're back, do tell the world by sharing this episode with everyone you think will find it valuable. This is me, Rohin Dharmakumar, signing off. We'll be back soon with another episode.